Good evening, Azeroth, and welcome to episode 159 of the World of Goldcraft. I'm your host, as always, the Lazy Goldmaker, and today I'm finally back to recording live. So that means that if you didn't, well, you had the opportunity to watch this live on twitch.tv/LazyGoldmaker. And I'm going to be most likely streaming on Thursdays again and recording the show live. Nice. Finally, my wife's foot is healed enough that she can take the brunt of the children at least one night a week, so that's very nice. So yeah, recording live. I have a couple of themes we're going to go through, or at least two, and obviously we're going to take some questions from Twitch chat as well. Hopefully, I already know we have one, so that's very nice. So that without further ado, let's just dive in. We're going to talk about, well, what I termed Wild Times, the Mage Tower. Because obviously the Mage Tower with Legion Time Walking came out this week, and it's a hard challenge. And there's also wacky scaling with gear and sockets, which means that there's a lot of old crafted gear, old crafted gems, old crafted consumables that are suddenly really, 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 really good. So yeah. If you had prepared, if you already read up on this on the PTR, some of you are already making a killing. There's been a ton of people in my chat all day making a killing with this. I did not. I ended up buying a bunch of gear for my own Warlock, and we've been trying to do the Mage Tower. But there's a lot of stuff. So particularly some examples that are relevant. The crafted Dreadful Gladiator stuff from Mists of Pandaria, generally because they have loads of sockets and the right item level to put the correct enchants and enhancements on them. And there's some gems that are selling for absolutely incredible amounts, including the ones from Dragon Soul, the Queen's Garnet in particular. So if you are if you've run a lot of Dragon Soul and you have a lot of moats, then you can go into Dragon Soul at the vendor and trade them for geodes that have a chance of containing the gems that are incredibly valuable. Right now, a brilliant Queen's Garnet is selling for like 16k, and if people are min-maxing, they're gonna need 15 of those for all their sockets, because they're gonna have a ton of sockets. So that's a lot of gold. So yeah. This is another example of where if you're staying informed ahead of time, if you're understanding what kind of advantages you can get from this gear, if you knew that ahead of time, whether you did that through your own testing on the PTR, reading up on time walking guides or whatever, and stocked up, then you probably made a huge amount of gold over the last 2 days. A lot of items have doubled or tripled in price. Enchants and gems are the main ones. I've seen some really crazy stuff. Legion enchants, BFA enchants. There's a ton of old world enchants that are selling really well right now. Probably prices are going to approach like a lower profit margin as people are going to buy out materials to craft more of these. Because I think a lot of people are going to want to, once they realize that a lot of the Mage Towers are a little bit difficult, they're going to want to eke out every last bit of performance they can from their gear. Every extra bit of performance they're gonna push for, obviously there's not that much else player power to really care about right now. We're in the sort of a content lull. So I expect for the next week that you can probably make a good bit of gold with these items. Just look up. There's tons of guides. Wowhead has a great guide on gearing and enchanting for the Mage Tower, which has all of the consumables, everything pretty much listed out. So do check that out, and you have pretty much the list of what you want to keep in stock. But yeah, being prepared ahead of time is once again has been much of an advantage, and this is something I've talked about in the past, like following along. Understanding what players are doing, understanding what items are good and why, is always going to be an advantage. And following like top theory crafters, top players within a niche, it's going to give you a great idea of what people will be looking to buy, because they're going to tell you, like, okay, yeah, we're looking for for the Mage Tower, you're going to need old world enchants to min-max your scaling. Okay, great, then you can make money with that. Yeah, this is one of those cool examples where old expansion crafts are relevant for a while. This has happened in the past in a couple of times, but rarely in as wide the scale as it is right now, because now a lot of old expansion crafted goods are best in slot. They're not actually best in slot for everything, but they are best in slot for the Mage Tower challenge, which for many people is the main, like the highest goal they can work on right now, the most important goal for them, because they have 2 weeks to finish this. So yeah. You don't have to be the first or have prepared to make money here. As I said, I think these items are gonna most likely sell for a profit over current material prices, unless there are people who have like stocked enough to sell for low prices for the full 2 weeks. I think that's a little bit unlikely. You'd need an extreme amount of materials for that. So I think we're gonna see prices stay up for a while, and I think you might be able to make some money. Maybe you have a bunch of materials stashed away. If you have some alts that you played during Legion or BFA or Mr. Pandaria, then check them out. You might have some good recipes, and you might also have some valuable materials or valuable consumables. There's a lot of items from the last couple of expansions that are now very, very relevant. So do take a look through those, and you might be able to earn a profit. And even stuff all the way back from Cataclysm with the Queen's Garnet gems that are the only way to buy that specific level of intellect. I think it's 4 intellect per. That's the only way to buy that. The only other way to get that is to farm Black Morass. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting and exciting to see how this market stays on. Obviously, this is gonna be a very seasonal thing. It's going to be right now, and then it's going to be whenever the next time the Mage Tower rolls around. So do remember this. It might be worth stocking up on 4 months in the future, just before the Mage Tower comes up again. Make sure you have these items. They're going to be cheap before then, and then they're suddenly going to be relevant again. But yeah, you don't overstock too much, because in 2 weeks' time, these items are going to be a lot less valuable. Because nobody's going to care when the Mage Tower isn't up. Like, why would you min-max your time walking gear right now? Well, obviously, you're not. For the gear, you might be able to sell it as transmog. A lot of the items, like the Crafted Dreadful stuff, is stuff I sell as transmog. Obviously, you need to craft it with some specific relics of the past. But like the item level isn't going to matter for transmog, and the relic of the past cost is also relatively low, so it doesn't really matter. So that's what's going on, the wild times right now. I have another thing that I wanted to talk about, the Community Council, and a little bit about the design of World of Warcraft. So the Community Council is out and about, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. I know some people encouraged me to apply. I didn't apply. I barely have time for what's already on my plate. So there's that. I'm not on the council, and I didn't even apply. Hopefully they picked someone who cares about professions. I might apply it next time around if it seems like I can contribute, or I feel like I actually have something to contribute, and I feel like the things that I care about aren't being talked about enough. But I've been wanting to ramble a little bit about World of Warcraft game design for a while. So I thought I'd start today and talk a little bit about the role of professions in World of Warcraft. And this is sort of also highlighted by what's just happening with the Mage Tower and all of the consumables and enchants and stuff. Because the role of professions has changed over time in World of Warcraft. They used to be a lot more integrated into player power and making your character strong. But they're not anymore. So like for those who also played Classic, will know that professions pretty much primarily were a thematic way of increasing your player power, as well as a way to sort of foster interaction between players in terms of crafting items that were useful to other players, or gathering materials that would be useful to other players. There was stuff like BOP gear from professions, or bonuses that would only be available for your profession, such as like the Bloodvine set from vanilla. This has been a thing since back then, that professions were meant to give you a kind of RPG-like element of increasing your player power through the economy. Obviously, we also have stuff like consumables that have been a core part of endgame player power since World of Warcraft Classic. In fact, World of Warcraft Classic, or the vanilla version, had incredibly strong consumables that they've never since had as many or as strong consumables. And they've also, of course, since then completely removed consumables as a factor in PvP. Whereas if you were grinding for, say, rank 14 in World of Warcraft Classic, then you would be using an incredible amount of consumables in your battlegrounds. Like, I've seen the shopping list for someone I know who is going for rank 14, and it's absolutely inhuman almost how many consumables they were using per week. There was just so many useful consumables. And then right now there's just a very few streamlined number of consumables. And professions don't play a meaningful role in your own character's power progression. Like, if you don't have tailoring, if you're like a cloth user and you don't have tailoring, it doesn't matter at all. You don't miss out on anything. The only possible gains you can have from having a profession in Shadowlands is to make money from it. And don't get me wrong, like, Shadowlands professions have been absolutely incredible for making money, specifically due to how legendaries work. But there's pretty much no other reason to care about professions. There's a little bit of utility, like, okay, if you're an engineer, then you can port around with the wormhole generator, which is super useful. And if you're an alchemist, then you get longer flash duration and you save some gold. And those are the only reasons to care about any professions in the game right now, for their own reason. Which I think that professions are a good way to deliver some player power. They've been delivering a lot of player power through stuff like fairly boring time-gated grinds that people haven't liked, like the Maw and Korthia. I think that professions could fill that role a little bit more. I think it's a nice way of delivering player power, essentially. Obviously, in the past, we've had issues where the professions had different bonuses, like blacksmiths could add a socket, and enchanters got their own ring enchants that were locked to certain stats. And in this case, it ended up like one of the bonuses was just like straight better than the others. So everyone needed to be blacksmiths to maximize their PvE or PvP performance. And obviously that's not necessarily good design either, because then it's just like a generic barrier to entry. Which is also, I guess, why they've gone away from it. But I think that having some benefit and having some reason to care about it, like, why is it so bad to have us have to grind our profession or grind some materials? Why is that worse than forcing people to, say, grind Korthia for archived research? I don't know. I don't think it's worse. Obviously, I'm biased since I love professions and love making money with it. But yeah, it hasn't been a thing in Shadowlands. BFA, though, actually had some benefits in the form of upgradable crafted BOP gear that was at least very relevant early in the patch cycle. I remember during some of the, I think it was 8.2, where the jewel crafting rings were incredible and everyone needed the red and green color rare gems, so the price just absolutely exploded on that. In Shadowlands, anything that's relevant is tradable. And there are some things you can make money with that fill sort of the same niche of like early patch upgrade, primarily the chain dial gear in 9.1 and the crafter's mark of the first ones is going to fill that role in 9.2. And getting that recipe, you're going to make a lot of gold for sure. But you can safely ignore professions if you don't care about them. And I think that at least the initial success of New World clearly shows that there's a lot of MMO players that like professions and like crafting and think that that's a cool part of MMOs. Even though like New World is looking to be in a pretty dire situation right now, and ultimately the overall implementation of crafting in that game is just not good for a multitude of reasons that I'm not going to go into in this episode. But crafting is popular. There's tons of games with crafting, with loads of crafting that are very, very popular in the single player genre as well. So I think that putting more focus on professions would, for many people, make WoW more fun, and I think it's a way to add casual, friendly content that that can deliver player power and be a core part of how you progress your character, or a part of that at least. Like, I personally missed the when you had tons of things to add to your gear as well, and that's the next point. Is that I also think that most professions should provide items that are useful to other players, finished items. We've had that in the past, say in Mr. Pandaria. Blacksmiths made the living eternal belt buckle that you put in your belt, and then you put the gem inside that belt buckle for an upgrade. Right now, it's very different. Some professions have items that are useful to other players, and some don't. Some only have gear, some only have consumables. Particular, I think that engineering really needs some reason to sell stuff to other players. I think engineering should get some item enhancements. I also think that it would be cool to get stuff like the shoulder inscriptions, spell thread from tailors, all of that jazz. I'd love to have that back. I think that was cool. I think that was a good part of the game. You can just balance the material costs. Like enchanting right now is dirt cheap. It's not the barrier to entry. Sure, it's okay, it's annoying to have to put that on an upgrade, but it's there's tons of longboys in the world as well, so it's realistically not a large friction point either. Just have that feeling of I got an upgrade and now I get to upgrade it even more myself. I like that, and I want to see more of that in the game. I think they started a little bit in the right direction with Shadowlands. There's a little bit more. There you have armor kits, you have a little bit more, and weapon oils, a little bit more than BFA had in that respect. And I'd love to see more of it. I think it's really cool. I think it fosters player interaction. It forces you or it makes you care a little bit about what your guild has in terms of professions available, stuff like that. And it gives you a reason to interact with other players through the auction house, through trade chat, or through talking with them, depending on what kind of person you are. And personally, I wouldn't really be talking to other people about professions in game, because I'm an introvert at heart. I'd just love to go to the auction house and buy my stuff and be done. But even that is a valuable interaction. It's a part of making WoW feel like a world. You are trading with other players. You are a part of a living, breathing economy. There are materials and finished items to sell and buy. So yeah, I think that professions could do with Blizzard deciding on what is the role of professions in the game. Because right now, the only role of professions in the game is to make rich people even richer, because that's really the only thing Shadowlands professions have. It's legendaries, which is incredibly profitable to craft. But you need it to be rich to get into the market. And right now, there's a huge barrier to entry, which, as someone who's already in the market, selfishly, I love that. As far as making good and overall interesting professions, it's not cool. It's just the least interesting professions have been in a while, which is sort of impressive, because BFA professions were not exactly super interesting either, whereas Legion professions actually were a lot more interesting. So yeah, but what do you guys think? Do let me know, either in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, on Twitter, anywhere you can find me, on Twitch. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and this is something that I've thought a lot about. I talked about it as well in the past, but I definitely wanted to bring it up again, because it was a little bit relevant with the Mage Tower, and suddenly making old world crafted items relevant from a power perspective and making them very profitable, which is cool. Yeah, that's it for the main content. Now we're going to take a look at what questions we have. So I knew we have one from Smooth George related to this stuff. From a gold making point of view, would you like Blizzard to create more unique time walking content to generate sales for old world professions? I'm not sure. I think it could be cool to give you a reason to have old professions outside of cosmetics. Not sure if they should do it specifically to allow people to make gold with it. But having old stuff be relevant, they have such a huge backlog of content, so that would be pretty cool to have that be relevant more often. Both the content and the items that come from it. So in general, I think that would be a good idea. Leviathan says, I liked the interconnectivity of the Mist of Pandaria professions. The Ghost Iron Shuffle was fantastic, yeah. Mr. Pandaria was one profession where I started late, but I made a ton of gold in that profession. The entire ecosystem was fantastic. Mr. Pandaria was very, 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 very cool. So yeah, Falar Combato asked if I'm going to cover some crypto games one day. Probably not, but you never know. Yeah. I think that's going to be what I answer today. We're already at 20 minutes, which is a lot longer than the last couple of episodes have been. So the benefits of being live and being healthy again. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like if you're watching this on YouTube, or just make sure you catch the next episode if you're listening on Spotify or any other podcasting platform. Subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube so you don't miss out on the next episode. And let me know what you think about professions. Do you agree with me or not? Hopefully some of you share your thoughts, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching or listening. Bye, guys.